I know that the media is obviously discredited as being unbiased at this point. There's no such thing as objective coverage. We're just more honest about our biases than the mainstream. But they really aren't doing a very good job of hiding it, are they? If you're confused what I'm referring to, on Thursday, this will be the 27th of June, 2024, the United States will see its first 2024 election presidential debate, and this will be hosted by none other than CNN, the most infamously antagonistic outlet to President Trump throughout the last 9 years that he's been involved in presidential politics now. There's a rundown here from the New York Times, which just provided an easy roundup, but the debate's hosted in Atlanta. It's starting at 9 p.m. Eastern time, so that's 2 a.m. UK time for us here in England, so we'll be watching that on catch-up, probably somewhere on Rumble or the like, because CNN has said that they'll be posting clips. So anything that looks particularly good for Trump, I don't think they'll be clipping and promoting anywhere. And of course, they'll probably region lock it, so we'll have to get it somewhere more reputable. What's quite interesting as well...
So if they're only going to be posting stuff that's good for Biden and not Trump, surely they'll just not broadcast any of it.
Well, yeah, you would think that. So what's interesting as well is that Tim Pool via YouTube via CNN has received a warning saying that CNN is threatening any social channels, so YouTube and the like, that provide commentary on the debate, stating they will not allow the use outside of CNN and obviously all of the other networks they're allowing to concurrently run it for free.
Presume commentary just means playing the video clip and reacting to it. No, right? Just any talking about it.
Yes, you're not allowed to do it live. So what's happened here, and this is the reason I've brought this up for us as well, because of course we've got totally bogus YouTube strikes before with complete ridiculous violations of their arbitrary code of conduct. If you put up clips of you talking about the clips, it will probably be taken down. Then you can contest it, because talking about a presidential election is the epitome of fair use, but you want to beware of a bogus strike. But if you're live streaming it live on YouTube, they'll just take the stream down, and there's no point contesting it because the stream will be deleted. So just a warning to our content creator friends out there in case you're watching. Now, the most dastardly part about this debate, though, is that the two moderators, Jake Tapper and Dana Bash. Now, if you're not familiar with them, they're two of CNN's primetime hosts, and I've got some clips of them later on to show just how terrible of a job I'm predicting they're going to do. But ahead of this, why would they need to run such damage control for Biden? As you suggested, well, the opinion polls aren't looking
Let's recognize
excellent.
This comment for what it is. A long-standing anti-Semitic trope that...
CNN is trying something. CNN sabotaging
we're already going straight there, aren't
yeah,
we?
well, there we go.
Oh, no.
I think the Elgato decided to screw up, but how prophetic. Well, all right, here we go. So here are the general election polls according to Real Clear Politics, and Trump is trouncing Biden by at least a point in the polling averages. Funny that, considering Biden was the most popular president of all time, including among black Americans in the middle of Detroit, more so than Obama. Very strange. I suppose 2024 will just be another safe and secure election. Anyway, so let's look at the Biden approval rating, because I'm sure that that's just glowing. That might provide some insight into why Trump is leading him. Yeah, not great. I mean, his disapproval rating is currently at 55.6%. His approval rating is at 40.6%. So if the polls are to be believed, Biden's going to get a 1980s Reagan election style spanking. Yeah. So might be a reason why CNN are anxious to run interference. So they've done a pre-debate write-up, and these are the issues that apparently everyone's concerned about. So this is due to Pew Research. So, sort of gold standard opinion polling. Strengthening the economy is the chief concern of most voters. Defending against terrorism, as you've already covered, the southern border being utterly porous and allowing over 1 million people in every year. Turns out they're coming from, Tajikistan?
Yes, that's right.
Where there's a lot of terrorism, turns out.
Yeah, it's sort of Afghanistan, Tajikistan, all of those countries in that area are involved with ISIS-K in some measure.
And do you want to know something fun that Biden's doing to deal with immigration, which, as we can see, is 57% on how many of these respondents said we want him to deal with immigration? Well, Biden's decided that what he's going to do is allow undocumented spouses to not have to worry about deportation. So presumably they'll just be given citizenship. So if you manage to sneak over the border and get married to anyone, to an Elvis impersonator, maybe, anyone, you're safe, you're all right. And they're predicting that's about 500,000 new Americans
passport bros voting for Biden en masse. I mean, again, lots of these issues are involved with immigration. Reducing the availability of illegal drugs. There's loads of fentanyl being trafficked over the southern border, particularly by the Chinese, who are now inexplicably flying over to the southern border and smuggling themselves across. Or reducing crime, for example. Reducing healthcare costs, which is obviously a welfare burden.
Quite interesting that this is a very, good list, if you will. If I had to sort of rank the priorities that the US had to tackle with, this is actually quite a good ranking, isn't it? Which is interesting for an opinion poll, particularly on CNN.
Well, it's being hosted by CNN, but obviously it came from Pew.
Oh, okay. So it does seem to suggest, though, that voters are actually quite aware of the problems in America, which is important.
Well, hence the terrible approval ratings for Biden, the positive approval ratings for Trump. The other interesting graphs they've got in this article, considering the economy is the top concern for Biden, it's not really looking good when you look at, inflation. So if you look there, Trump, it turns out, in 2019, 2020 was actually a deflationary force. Prices were coming down because cheap and available and abundant energy that the Americas were exporting, good employment, decent business rates and the like. And then after 2020, look there. There's January 2021 when Biden is inaugurated, and something happens where it skyrockets to 9% up there.
I'm going to have to tip my fedora ever so slightly and say that Trump reduced the rate of inflation, but he didn't actually deflate it because it didn't go past zero.
Yes, well, he's a deflationary force on the rate of inflation, but yes, valid point. But now the new normal itself is set with Joe Biden at 3.3%. So if he's touting the fact that inflation's come down, it's now sort of flatlining at a steady rate of 3.3%. That doesn't mean prices are going down. That means things are just increasing slower than they were in 2021 and 2022, when Biden printed all of that money to pay for stimulus checks and the so-called Inflation Reduction Act.
Just to confirm, the CPI doesn't take into account food, does it?
I don't know about the United States. In this country, I know it doesn't take into account energy bills, house prices, and certain goods of food.
Okay, yeah. I was wondering if it's the same in America, then.
Their housing situation is slightly less worse, but it's worsening as well because of illegal migration as well. And then the other interesting one that's in here is unemployment. If you notice there's a massive spike that Biden obviously says Trump unemployment is a record high. That's because of lockdowns. That's mainly because of Democrat states prolonging their lockdowns for a very long time. But then, as we can see, unemployment is actually ticking back up. And it's higher than it was during the Trump years. And now it's sitting at 4%. It's almost like all of those damaging regulations to the economy, sabotaging America's energy independence, importing millions of dependents, hasn't done great things for the job market. And if people are voting for the economy, I don't think it's going to go too well for Biden. So America at a pretty fateful crossroads. So let's think. CNN, are they going to conduct a impartial, dignified debate? Or are they going to absolutely lose their minds whenever someone suggests to the contrary? So this is Caroline Leavitt, who's a Trump spokeswoman. She went on CNN, this was Monday, and Casey Hunt, who is the anchor here, invited her on to have a chat about what Trump's going to say during the debate, and the conversation lasted all of about 90 seconds. I'm just going to let this play out because you're not going to believe the level of blatant bias on display.
Themselves as professionals, as they have covered campaigns and interviewed candidates from all sides of the aisle. I'll also say that if you talk to analysts of debates previous, that if you're attacking the moderators, you're usually losing. So I really want to focus in on what these two men are going to do and say when they stand on the stage. Now, we have a little bit of what Donald Trump, your boss, has said in trying to set expectations for this debate. I want to play a series of his comments, and then we'll talk about it. Watch.
Well, maybe I'm better off losing the debate. I'll make sure he says I'll lose the debate on purpose. Maybe I'll do something like that.
I assume he's going to be somebody that will be a worthy debater.
Should I be tough and nasty and just say you're the worst president in history? Or should I be nice and calm and let him speak?
So he's basically saying there, well, will I let Joe Biden win? It does seem as though many Republicans have set the bar very low in terms of arguing that Joe Biden is basically senile. Now you have people like Doug Burgum coming out and saying, well, President Biden's very accomplished, trying to set expectations in a different place. What do you expect from Joe Biden?
Well, first of all, it takes someone 5 minutes to Google Jake Tapper, Donald Trump, to see that Jake Tapper has consistently
stop this interview if you're going to keep
President
attacking
Trump
my colleagues.
to Adolf Hitler.
Ma'am, I'm going to stop this interview if you continue
stating,
to attack my colleagues. I would like to talk about Joe Biden and Donald Trump, who you work for.
Yes.
If you are here to speak on his behalf, I am willing to have this conversation.
I am stating facts that your colleagues have stated in the past.
Okay.
Now,
I'm sorry, guys. We're going to come back out to the panel. Caroline, thank you very much for your time. You are welcome to come back at any point. She is welcome to come back and speak about Donald Trump, and Donald Trump will have equal time to Joe Biden when they both join us now at later this week in Atlanta for this debate. Our thanks to Caroline. John.
She looks like she's about to burst into tears.
A show of great strength and confidence from her right there. I mean, good God. Although I do agree that, the way to win the debate, don't say a word and let Biden go off the cuff for an hour and a half.
Yeah, the more syllables he gets out, the faster his IV of stimulants runs out, and so he'll just be saying Badacaf care by the first 30 minutes.
It's going to be like a Norm Macdonald stand-up, isn't it? Like on a talk show where it's just going to be a great big long shaggy dog story, as they're called, where he's no one knows what's going on.
To be fair, do you reckon if you let Biden speak unmedicated, off the cuff, for long enough, he would end up accidentally just spilling state secrets?
I think he'll revert back to sort of like 60s to 80s Joe Biden and saying exactly what he thinks of corn pop. And that wouldn't be good for the black voting demographic, let's be honest. But I think this was really interesting.
Oh, let it happen. That would be an event.
Yeah, well, he already did say that if you don't vote for Joe Biden, you ain't black. So I think he sort of crossed that tripwire a little bit. I thought this was quite an interesting clip, not just because we all know that these media institutions are horrifically biased and are mouthpieces for the regime, the warmongering establishment that infects both parties, as we've seen with the recent WikiLeaks case. But I thought this was really interesting because she is so bad at her job. She's on the precipice of falling into tears, because if anyone's sat in a newsroom before, anytime, and I couldn't do broadcast TV for this reason, anytime you're a presenter, you've got a little earpiece and it's actually back to the production booth. So you can, between breaks, talk about what's next in the news bulletin, how long you've got until you're introing the next show, etc. But sometimes overzealous producers who want a control over what is said on the show will be shouting in your ear and telling you to hurry up and move on. And I think she was getting a bollocking from the people who are working at the news desk saying, shut this down quickly because we don't want to, ahead of the debate, be seen as horrifically biased and tampering with the election. I think that she was buckling under pressure because she was getting shouted at by some producer who's going, control the narrative quickly, kick her off the air, etc. And it just makes it look even worse than it already needed to. I think it's pretty embarrassing. Now, so she decides to come out and
let's recognize this comment.
Oh, it's doing it
Something's
again.
happening. There's a ghost in the machine.
CNN
She desperately wants to speak about anti-Semitism.
It's like busting through the wall like the Kool-Aid man. So she decides to defend her conduct here, and she says, you come on my show, you respect my colleagues. Period. I don't care what side of the aisle you stand on. Sure you don't. As my track record clearly shows. That's interesting. You don't care about what side of the aisle you stand on, as your track record clearly shows. Well, let's see her track record, shall we? There was a response to this, of course, because this became a little bit of a scandal in the US political sphere. And the Politico got a statement from both parties. In a statement to Politico, Leavitt, the Trump spokeswoman, said that the debate will be a 3v1 fight, of course. CNN cutting my microphone off for bringing up a debate moderator's history of anti-Trump lies just proves our point that President Trump will not be treated fairly in Thursday's debate. Yes, but yet President Trump is still willing to go into this 3v1 fight to bring his winning message to the American people, and he will win. CNN did their boring retort saying that Bash and Tapper are well-respected veteran journalists and have extensive experience moderating major political debates. There are no two people better equipped to co-moderate a substantial and fact-based discussion, and we look forward to the debate on June the 27th in Atlanta.
CNN evaluates themselves, conclude, we're brilliant.
Yeah, quite. I did some evaluation of my own, and I don't think they're quite brilliant. So again, remember Casey Hunt's words. As my track record shows, she doesn't care what side of the aisle you stand on. Unless you're Rand Paul, in which case she's kind of gleeful that a near-lethal attack was done against you. Let's just play this old clip.
New details today on the incident that left Senator Rand Paul with 6 broken ribs. This might be one of my favorite stories, although, of course, we don't want to. Clearly, Senator Paul is still struggling. Paul's neighbor, Renee Boucher, is accused of beating the senator, and GQ reports that lawn care issues may well have been at the heart.
You can tell she immediately regretted saying that. She's like, oh, that slipped out.
The mask slipped, absolutely. And then she couldn't even walk it back properly. Obviously, we don't want to anyway. Yep. It's like the distancing itself was forced. The I'm really glad he was harmed was organic. If you want the details on this story, it was pretty horrific, actually. So Rand Paul's neighbor, he took the man to court. He was awarded $375,000 in punitive damages, $200,000 for pain and suffering, and $7,834 for medical expenses after Rene Boucher, who was 60, tackled Paul in November of 2017 over what he alleges was a dispute concerning Senator Paul's lawnmower blowing leaves onto his grass.
So
that's a rational
he got into a debate with Rand Paul about property rights.
And decided to tackle him to the ground and break his ribs, yeah.
Yeah, well, he couldn't win legitimately, that's for sure.
No, like most of Rand Paul's Senate colleagues. Rand Paul responded, we need to send a clear message that violence is not the answer. Anytime, anywhere, we can hold different views, whether it's politics, religion, or day-to-day matters. Butcher himself said the attack was not politically motivated. The court denied his appeal. This was the same attack Rand Paul suffered that I believe is Nancy Pelosi's daughter celebrated in a tweet and then quickly deleted as well. So if there's any doubt that the Democrat machine wishes harm on the patriotic populist Republicans like Rand Paul or Donald Trump or Matt Gaetz, there shouldn't be, because they would sooner see you dead than happy. Just remember this bit. Now, it's not just Paul as well. This whole climate of attacks has been inflicted on Paul's staffer, and this is actually a story that's quite close to my heart, because the guy that ended up helping save him is one of my good friends, Chris, from university, which is very, very strange. But Rand Paul's staff was nearly stabbed to death last year. This is Phil Todd. He was stabbed outside a Mexican restaurant in March 2023 by Glenn Neal, who was arrested by police and charged with assault and attempt to kill. Neal had just been let out of prison 1 day prior to the stabbing. Neal was previously sentenced to 12 years and 4 months in prison in 2011 for forcing a woman into prostitution and threatening to kidnap or injure a person. Neal told officers he heard a voice telling him that someone was going to get him right before he launched the attack, according to court documents obtained by the AP. The attacker is, as expected, a New York Post euphemism. Now, of course, the Casey Hunt, didn't wish this attack on Phil, but her station was celebrating the 2020 riots as a summer of love. As Chris Cuomo had said, show me in the Constitution where it said riots need to be peaceful, and so all of the defunding the police and open prison policies that flowed thereon have let nutcases like this out on the street. Not excellent, is it? It doesn't seem politically motivated, but it's still enabled by the kind of politics spread by CNN.
Well, I think the political motivation, like you're pointing out there, is that you allow these incredibly lax laws to happen, basically with the hopes that the people who are getting let out of prison eventually sow chaos, which will mainly affect your enemies, because your enemies are law-abiding people who maybe aren't on the same rung of the social ladder as you, to live in gated communities where you can avoid all of this.
Exactly this. This is classic anarcho-tyranny, as I've covered on my show on the website with excellent author Oren McIntyre and friend of the show. There's a quote here from Chris, actually, who helped him out, and he said, "We were just suddenly lunged at by the guy who was hiding behind the wall, and he started stabbing Todd. Out of nowhere, he didn't ask for anything, he didn't say anything, he just started stabbing him. Phil's a close friend, an absolute champ, and he was able to run despite being stabbed in the head, having a skull fracture and brain bleeding and a punctured lung." So it just shows the resilience of people working in Paul's office compared to their wet Democrat counterparts. So Senator Paul, almost killed. Staffer, almost killed. And yet Casey Hunt seems to be celebrating that climate, or at least enabling it with her politics. So what about the two moderators themselves? Okay, so Casey Hunt trying to run damage control for this. She's got egg on her face. It could be possible that Jake Tapper and Dana Bash are very impartial. They're going to give Trump a fair hearing. I mean, they're Pulitzer Prize-winning journalists, after all. I have my doubts, though, because as Jack Posobiec has compiled, here's Jake Tapper's thoughts on President Trump.
The dehumanizing rhetoric of Adolf Hitler is once again alive and well on a national political stage. This time, of course, in the United States. Donald Trump, a couple times over the weekend, referred to immigrants from South America, Africa, and Asia. He did not mention Europe. South America, Africa, and Asia as, quote, poisoning the blood of our country, which it's not hyperbole. That does very directly echo Adolf Hitler's language before World War II. To open up a copy of Hitler's Mein Kampf, you would find the Nazi leader describing the mixing of non-Germans with Germans as poisoning. There's really no other way to say it. Donald Trump's language mirrors this directly.
Yeah, I have my doubts that he's going to be super fair to Trump there. It's just, again, it's
when are those network broadcasts from? Is this from this
2023?
2023. But okay, right. But there was 4 years of Trump presidency, and maybe the press hid it. Maybe CNN was on his side during that, but I don't remember any grand Mexican genocides or anything.
He might have been just slow on constructing the death camps. Maybe it's that.
That's what the wall was supposed to be. An enormous meat grinder as they try and get through.
I don't remember the immigration crisis in mid-century Germany either. Where are the parallels exactly? Aren't they different things?
Here's the parallels. Adolf Hitler say meanie words. Big bad Trump also say meanie words.
That's very profound.
Therefore,
thank you, Harry.
Exact same.
Yeah, I think there's a marginal difference in policy from expelling illegal immigrants trying to break into the country and preventing any Jews from leaving the country because you want to kill them. Also, slightly insulting, again, I don't like playing the intersectional game, but it's just a nonsense accusation when Trump has Jewish grandchildren. It's just so boring and tiresome.
I always forget that.
Yeah.
That's really...
Jared Kushner's his son-in-law. Yeah. Like I think he was the most pro-Israel president of our lifetimes. I mean, criticize him for that if you like.
Even Rabbi Shmuley loves Trump because of how pro-Israel he was, and Rabbi Shmuley is an absolute nutjob. Please don't sue me.
He is very fond of accusing people of being like Adolf Hitler. Yes, so the fact that he hasn't leveled that charge at Trump, I suppose, speaks volumes. But okay, maybe Dana Bash is going to be fairer. Maybe there's a good cop, bad cop here. You certainly haven't been listening to a preface of what she's going to be saying throughout this podcast, all the tech issues, but I'll just let her speak for herself.
For what it is, a long-standing anti-Semitic trope that the true allegiance for Jews is to their religion rather than their country. It was used in Nazi Germany to justify the arrests, persecutions, and mass killings, attempted extermination of the Jewish people. And Trump has been pushing this trope for years.
He talks about the blood of America as being poisoned, echoing the same exact language used in Nazi Germany.
That's the most coherent sentence Biden's ever given.
Do you remember that scene at the beginning of Austin Powers when he's unfrozen and he can't control the volume of his voice? That's what Biden reminded me of.
I actually got that same thought, yeah.
I'm so exhausted and bored by the constant invocation of Godwin's law by Godwin himself. He wrote an article in the Washington Post accusing Donald Trump of being like Adolf Hitler. So it's just farcical. Not everything is directly comparable to the mustache man from the 1930s in Germany. There are remarkable differences. And actually, having a preference for your own culture, country, countrymen, and history does not mean you're going to resurrect the guard towers of Auschwitz. So the CNN debate is going to be an absolute farce. I look forward to the clips. I look forward to Trump trouncing them again like he did at the town hall. And I hope this doesn't wash with the American people who are facing horrendous immigration and inflation rates.
Hi folks, thanks for watching. This is a clip from a broader podcast called the Podcast of the Lotus Eaters. It's live 1 p.m. every day UK time, Monday to Friday. And if you want to support us, you can sign up for £5 a month, help us keep the lights on, because of course we're demonetized here, and go and watch Lads Hour. Lads Hour is one of my favourite shows because it's basically, and I guess there's no easy way to describe it, than calling it The View, but for men. We talk about whatever we want, but from an unabashedly masculine perspective, and we have a great time doing it. So come over and watch that.